10th, I realized that I had just had a slight reporting error in terms of the amount of funding that's available. Additional projects, a little confusing. There is a total amount of just over $500,000 available. Things like traditionally, the last handful of years, projects can be anything from set aside as administrative supplemental service on an administrative cost or administrative next page, rather the city of Asheville overview the direct recipient available, and they administer the grant to subrecipients. So long story short, that first chart is incorrect. The second table shown under the
Tristan, could you scroll down, please? Thank you.
The correct numbers. Essentially what I was doing. No worries. Reporting out 55, 35. Just want to give a quick walkthrough on available money. Information that was previously shared. Reporting a 55. I incorrectly summarized the total percentage amounts that were available. So that first little bit of chart there was showing what was originally shared. Transparency on January 10th, I realized that I could scroll down to the slight reporting error in terms of the amount of funding available. Make a note here. These are using there is a total amount of just over $500,000 available. Additionally, the last handful of years, 10% of that amount has been set aside as the administrative to date. So currently there are, for administrative fund in Buncombe County, there are RIDE programs, which is essentially sort of an above and beyond supplemental RIDE service. It's available 24/7. So long story short, that first chart is supplement correct. The second to Mountain Mobility, which shown under the 1 second application date, are the correct numbers. Traditionally, what I was doing was through reporting out a 55-35 split. City of Asheville had 90% available money when I should have been contracted through reporting a 55-35 and counting of the total amount from county for Mountain Mobility. The last two items that Land of Sky Regional Companion funds that are available. Land of Sky Regional Council. We continue to hold down to the LOSRC. Program to note here, these are the Land of Sky match requirements. It essentially various types of projects. Low wealth, senior volunteers, the next other seniors needing strides to through like doctor's appointments. The applications to date, things that are also currently there are some applications in Buncombe County. There are RIDE programs through more traditional programs like sort of an above and beyond supplemental RIDE. The last is available 24/7, 365 was from Supplemental Transportation Authority to Mountain Mobility, which is under existing second applications within the four traditional funding program through the 50. The next screen, the City of Asheville's paratransit program is a brief summary through and managed and provided by the original funding through Mountain Mobility. And then the last two items, the Land of Sky Regional Companion that there were funding, Land of Sky Regional Council, senior traditional projects, and LOSRC is a program that's managed through Land of Sky Regional Council. It essentially pairs low wealth volunteers with summary of your seeing RIDE potential shortfall that came in with all the applications that came in. Basically, things that are often traditional, the trips that are traditional projects, sometimes funding different available to seniors through $13,000 programs like Mountain Mobility or the total project, the last for other funds would have resulted in a $33,000 Madison shortfall. So what we did was we presented these projects initially to the NPO planning area for prioritization subcommittee on January 4th. The next screen, the brief discussion. This is a brief summary of 53 again, subrecipients group, which original funding that was made in the region. Once again, was my mistake. Land of Sky Regional doing the quick math. Land of Sky Regional, there were funding shortfalls for both Madison County traditional projects and other projects. January 10th, we'll just basically we discussed the potential shortfall, and this is just like doing a quick clear through there on that chart summary table with the yellow highlights. Potential shortfall that came in with the decision applications to forego the City of Asheville traditional projects set aside had funding difference surpluses of $13,000 another out of that fund, so it still created total project surplus asked for other remaining funds resulted in $33,000, which is 6% of total funds. Which what we did was we presented the made projects initially to allot that to the City Prioritization Subcommittee on January 4th. So long story short, all of the project decisions are essentially receiving 100% 53 of the subrecipient city of Asheville, which is basically still be receiving providers a 6% administrative latest Sky Regional cost allocation in this round, because they use their traditional included at a meeting on January 10th. Just going down, basically we discussed the potential very brief overview of just in doing a quick walkthrough there. The only reason yellow highlight Land Sky Regional County decision was made for the city of Asheville because they provide administrative set aside that don't have full capacity to provide traditional and other ADA. So it still creates a surplus, either buses or remaining funds, so just over $31,000, which is 6% of total funds. But again, the decision, the overall objective, has been requested to fund all these projects out of the city of Asheville for their still giving the city. So long story short, remainder of all of the projects are potentially receiving the recommendation of their funding request in the city of Asheville pass through. They'll be receiving a 6% administrative mention transit committees and the MPO's cost allocation in this round to fund under the traditional 10% as recommended. So just going down to the next screen, that's just a very brief overview of how the projects scored. The only reason I believe that
Tom Widmer, Town of Monterey. Scott, thank you for that report.
Because they
when
provide
was the call for projects
so they don't have the full
announced?
capacity to provide. The call for projects was announced, I believe, and if I look back, it was middle of November, and the only reason they were the last, but again, deadline for application objective was December 5th to fund all these projects at 100% of their request. Still giving the city and City Cameron has her hand for administrative costs.
Yeah, I just wanted to note that even though the 6% isn't covering our full operational costs as applying for the grants and the work that our staff have to do, I am supporting this today because I think it's a good signal of the work the city and the county are doing with staff together, collectively, collaboratively. I think that's a good sign of the kind of collaborative work we can do together.
Tom Widmer, Town of Monterey. Scott,
so I'm not sure it should
report.
be
when was
common that we
the
not
call
cover
for
our
projects
operational costs. I am supporting it
announced?
today.
The call for projects was announced, I believe,
piggyback off real quick,
middle of November.
City for meeting and agreeing to this to give everyone
deadline for application,
and I really want to thank December 5th City of Asheville for stepping up.
Gotcha, thank you.
It was a lot of contention in the prioritization.
See, Cameron has her hand raised
on how to move forward, and I've been
Yeah, I just wanted to note that even though the 6% isn't covering our full operational costs as applying for the grants and
I would entertain a motion to approve
the work that our staff have to do, I am supporting this today because I think it's a good signal of the work the city and the county are doing
like I said,
with staff
it was,
together,
a bit of,
collectively, collaboratively. I think that's a good sign of the
few
kind of
rounds of
collaborative work
math
we can
and,
do together on
few rounds of discussion, but
strengthening our core for
to my
regional
knowledge,
transit. So
yes,
though I'm not
city,
sure it should be common that we
the
not
primary,
cover our operational costs, I am
consultation
supporting
on
it
this,
today.
and she definitely emphasized.
Thank you so much.
She wanted this to be
I
a
wanted to
unique
piggyback off Kim real quick.
situation this round, but
I want to thank the city for meeting and agreeing to this, that gives everyone what they asked for. And
Sutton just made a motion.
Congressman
It
Edwards
was a.
just is outside, so
Organization.
Anthony's meeting him. He'll be right back. I'm so sorry.
I believe we may have a special guest in just a moment. There's some motion behind me, but I would entertain a motion to approve this.
Sutton just made a motion a moment ago, but we, it's okay.
Maybe we don't know any other comments.
To clarify. No, like I said, it was, a bit of, a few rounds of math and, a few rounds of discussion, but to my knowledge, yes, the city, Jessica Morris, the primary point of.
Can we continue to move things along if one of us others makes a motion for that?
I think they actually called for
this round, but certainly not.
Okay.
Yeah.
In that case, so moved. Matt Wechtel.
A second, Jen Hensley.
Chairman Sutton just made a motion.
Congressman Edwards just as outside, so. EOC Division 14, Chuck McGrady. I'm so sorry.
Aye.
Is there Buncombe County, Parker Sloan?
I believe,
Buncombe County, Amanda Edwards?
Just
Aye.
made a motion a moment ago, but we'll
Fletcher, Bob
maybe
Daisy?
wait a moment for
Aye.
them to clarify that.
Haywood County, Kevin Hensley?
Aye.
Henderson County, Bill Lastly? Henderson County, Rebecca McCall? Hendersonville, Jennifer Hensley?
Aye.
Can we continue to move things along if one of the rest, if
Laurel Park,
one of
George
us,
Banta?
others makes a motion for that?
Yeah,
Madison County, Matt Wexel?
for a motion.
Aye.
That he made the motion.
Okay, well,
Okay.
in
Milk River,
that case,
Shannon,
so
Don?
moved. Matt Wechtel.
I'll second,
Montrose,
Jen
Tom
Hensley.
Whitmer?
Aye.
Okay. Beaverville, Asheville, Kimroni?
Aye.
The ayes have it. EOC Division 14, Chuck McGrady?
Sorry.
That's all right.
Yes.
We
Aye.
did.
Oh, fantastic. I'd like to,
Buncombe County, Parker Sloan?
Chuck Edwards.
Buncombe County, Amanda Edwards?
Aye.
Hey, everybody, thanks
Fletcher,
for
Bob
letting us
Daisy?
interrupt.
Aye.
As we were
Haywood County,
driving up
Kevin
to Irwin
Hensley?
High School,
Aye.
we thought, well, Land of Sky is right
Henderson
there.
County, Bill Lastly?
Let's go reenact a scene from The Wedding Crashers.
Henderson County, Rebecca McCall?
And so sure enough, here we are. No, we had no idea you were meeting.
Hendersonville,
But we did
Jennifer
want to
Hensley?
poke our head in and
Aye.
say hello to whoever was here.
Laurel Park, George
Some
Banta?
really good news, I think, for this
Madison County,
district,
Matt
the
Wexel?
11th Congressional District. 2 nights ago, I was
Milk River,
appointed to
Shannon, Don?
Transportation and Infrastructure Committee.
Montrose,
One that
Tom
I
Whitmer?
campaigned for
Aye.
very hard because it's one where
Beaverville,
I think I
Catherine
can
Cordell?
help you make the
Yeah,
most difference for this district. So it's fitting, in at least in my term, I got to
Yes.
pop in today.
Oh, fantastic.
Realize
I'd like
you were here.
to
I
introduce
promised we'd get out of
Chuck
here.
Edwards.
I think it's important that you know who some of our staff are. Hey, everybody, thanks for letting us interrupt. On the left here, as we got Tommy Lauder, driving up to Tommy, who's the regional rep. Well, Land of Sky is right there. Office, and he'll be covering. Let's go reenact the scene from. On the right, we have. Chris Barnes is sure district director. No, we had no idea. Headquartered in Harrison County. We did want to poke our head in, but he'll be whoever was here. Hiring and supervising staff. Some really good news. Entire district. I think helping coordinate this district, the efforts here. Congressional district. So these two folks are all going to be available for your transportation and the infrastructure. One that I campaigned. And then the young lady in the middle is our chief of staff. I think I can help
Bronwyn Lance.
help you. She's a graduate of Irwin High School, which is one of the reasons that we're headed to Irwin right now. Bronwyn is very experienced. She served on Capitol Hill for 17 years. That you were here. With almost every job that's available. I think it's important that you know who some of our staff, except for chief of staff. Now, I'm really, on the left here, we've got Tommy. To have somebody with this level. Tommy is the regional rep serving us in our district office, and he'll be covering Buncombe County. On the right, we have Chris Barnes. Chris Barnes is the district director. He's. Here we go. Hiring and. So I apologize for the interruption, but I'm really tired and I got to go out to coordinate. Efforts here. So these two folks are always going to be around. Thank you. I don't know if you've got enough business cards to pass around.
I do.
And then the young lady in the middle is our chief of staff, Bronwyn Lance. She's a graduate of Irwin High School, which is one of the reasons that we're here at Irwin.
I'd like to do,
Bronwyn is very experienced. She served on Capitol Hill for 17 years. With almost every job that's available.
the first time that
we mentioned them
for job access.
On Capitol Hill, except for chief of staff.
That's correct.
Now, I'm really.
Correct. So this is somebody again, transportation planner with CMPO, in addition to, FTA section 5310. We also have a training call for projects.
I would have to hear
Part of the section 53.
So I apologize for the interruption, but I'm really glad.
Essentially, funds for urbanized areas.
Interrupt.
remaining practice of several years to allocate 10% of whatever 5307 funds are available for the region, specifically for tax access for use projects.
I'd like to do,
and again, there's just a summary of different types of projects, really just for informational purposes.
what was helpful.
And specifically, we could
For job access
the current example of those funding for projects, right? So this is Kurt Adams again, transportation planner with the NPO. In addition to Route 170, FTA section 5310, just funds, we also have a current project funding available for which are type projects such as $1,000 section 5307 funds page. The current request for essentially transit funds to continue funding this service between downtown Asheville and downtown Black Mountain. Standing practice just over $250,000 several years has been to be recommendation of whatever funding for 307 funds are available for the region, specifically for 70 jobs access for commute type projects. Bottom note there, and again, this is 23 update summary of the charter funding request was also discussed in parallel with the 5310 request. Typically, if we go to the modernization subcommittee 5307 current example of charter funding and the project, the city has noted that given this current remaining funds available for courtyard type projects, that's $153,000 shown up on the screen. They may lodge a second funding request to fund funding available for certain type projects, just $100,000 shown in the bottom there. We're going to have the next route, the current request Square, Asheville outlet to continue funding this service between downtown Asheville and downtown Black Mountain. That's connecting to the remainder of $50,000 areas that are jobs. The recommendation is to approve that funding request from the city of Asheville. Questions or comments? Route 170.
How many people are usually riding? I mean, 8 trips a day.
Bottom note there on the 110 update. The charter funding request was also discussed in parallel with 5310 request at the NPO's prioritization subcommittee. The current estimated daily riders about 180. The city has noted that given the maintenance funds available for courtyard type projects, that $153,000. Any other questions? They may lodge a second funding request to fund similar routes.
No other comments that I do have.
Those are just several.
Thank you again.
City shown at the bottom there. Routes serving Biltmore Town Square, Asheville outlets, what have you, essentially. Yes, and all. And just make a quick note that that's connecting the remainder of actually collaboration areas of the city of Asheville, Buncombe County. And so with that, glad to take any questions or comments.
So with that, I'll
Is there any
entertain
data that says
motion
how
to
many
approve.
people are usually riding? I mean, 8 trips a day?
Yes, I'd have to look back at my notes,
Oh, my
I
God.
believe.
Thank you, sir.
Okay, give me just one
Do we have
second.
Ben
Let's
Hensley,
see.
second.
The current estimated daily riders is about 180 people.
Asheville, Cameroni.
On this specific route. Any other questions?
DOT Division 14, Chuck McGrady.
Aye.
No hands. Buncombe County, Parker Sloan.
No other comments that I do have. Thanks, sir.
Buncombe County,
Thank you
Amanda
again,
Edwards.
City of Asheville
Aye.
for working on that, and,
Fletcher, Bob Davy.
the more you do,
Aye.
the more
Just,
people
you
will
won't check
be
around.
excited about that.
Yes, and I'll
Haywood
also
County,
just
Kevin
make
Hensley.
a quick note that includes the funding is actually a
Hendersonville,
collaboration
Jennifer
between the
Hensley.
city of Asheville, Buncombe
Aye.
County, and the town of Black Mountain.
Yes. That's great.
Laurel Park, George
So
Banta.
with that, I'll entertain a motion to approve.
Madison County, Matt Wexel.
Aye.
Mills River, Shannon Goss.
Aye. I'll make the motion.
On Street, Tom
Thank you,
Wigmer.
sir. Sir, do we have a second?
Waynesville, Anthony
Ben
Sutton.
Hensley, second.
And Weaverville, Catherine
Thank
Cordell.
you.
Aye. The ayes have it.
You're on.
Asheville, Cameroni.
Next is, the discussion about the application to NCDOT for TAP non-infrastructure funds and.
DOT Division 14, Chuck McGrady.
Aye.
Buncombe County, Parker Sloan. We're gonna have to get an acronym sheet out.
Alternative program. And there is a wonderful acronym
Fletcher, Bob
on the
Davies,
website.
Aye.
Under the FAQs, by the way.
We always have a copy.
Haywood County, Kevin Inslee,
Or we've got a
Aye.
spreadsheet and an acronym.
Hendersonville, Jennifer Hensley,
Yep. So it's on the website.
Laurel Park, George Banta,
I believe it's something like, what are all the
Madison
acronyms?
County, Matt Wexel,
Right?
Aye.
So which stat?
Mills River, Shannon Gaunt,
Aye.
Blake Tristan. On Street, Tom
I'll
Whitmer,
cover this one today. So, DOT is making, what they're calling
Greenville,
non-infrastructure,
Anthony
federal transportation
Weaverville,
alternatives
Catherine
program
Cordell.
funds available, through
Yeah,
a
I
call
have.
for projects. So non-infrastructure, meaning these funds are not
Discussion about the
for putting in
application to
things like,
MCDOT for past
sidewalks, bike lanes, or even bike
non-infrastructure
racks
funds and
traditionally,
past stands.
but have really been utilized for safe routes to school coordinators, whereas NCDOT has.
We're gonna have to get an acronym
referred to
sheet
them
out.
Transportation Alternative Program. And there is a wonderful
So,
acronym sheet
our
on the
region did
website.
have,
Under
two
the
different,
FAQs, by the way.
active
We always
routes
have
to school
popular
coordinators
sayings about,
previously.
don't worry, we've got a spreadsheet and
One,
an
I believe,
acronym.
was out of
Solve all
Rutherford
your
County.
problems.
So it's on the
That
website
person
under the
covered,
FAQs, so I believe
Henderson
it's
County,
something like,
Buncombe
what are all
County,
these
Madison
acronyms?
County. We also had another coordinator based out of
So
Sylvan,
which stat?
in the Jackson County Department of Health,
Blake Tristan.
covered
Yes.
Haywood and Transylvania
I'll cover
counties.
this one today.
So
The
position
DOT
out
is
of Rutherford
making,
has been
what
vacant
they're calling
for,
non-infrastructure,
I believe,
federal
4.5 years
transportation
now.
alternatives program funds
The
available.
position out of
through a
Jackson
call
County
for
expired
projects.
June
So
30th of this
non-infrastructure,
year.
meaning these funds are not
So
for
one thing
putting in
we've kind of been
things
tossing
like,
around is putting
sidewalks,
in an
bike
application
lanes,
to
or even bike
cover
racks
the
traditionally.
5-county area,
But have
that
really been
would
utilized
include,
for safe routes to school
Buncombe,
coordinators.
Haywood,
Whereas
Henderson,
NCDOT
Madison, and
has
Transylvania counties
referred to
or
them as
essentially the
active
French
routes
Broad
to
River
school
NPO planning
coordinators.
area, as well as the land of
So,
rural planning
our
organization
region
planning
did
area.
have
So,
two different.
we are hoping
active
to
routes
get
to
this
school
board's
coordinators
blessing for putting in an
previously.
application.
One, I believe,
position
was out of Rutherford County.
And
or
so
Rutherford
that
County.
would enable us to
and
hire a new safe routes to school coordinator.
That person
to cover our
covered
region. Henderson
and
County,
help do
Buncombe
things
County,
like
Madison
walk to
County.
school events.
We also had
bike to
another
school
coordinator
events,
based
help
out
do
of
safety
Silva,
audits
in the Jackson County.
We had
Department of Health
a
to
number of
cover
safety
Haywood
audits
and
done by the
Transylvania
previous
counties.
coordinator in Haywood County.
The
that I
position
think
out
were
of
really
Rutherford has
helpful,
been vacant for,
tools to help
I
get
believe,
people more
4
aware of
and a
some of
half
the
years
safety
now.
issues
For
students
the
walking and
position
biking
out
to
of
school.
Jackson County expired June
But
30th.
really
of this
doing
year.
a lot of the
So one thing
encouragement
we've
and
kind of been tossing
education
around is
that I
putting
think
in an
our
application to
region
cover
use.
the 5-county area.
I do have
Just
that
a
would
quick couple
include,
of slides to go through.
Buncombe, Haywood,
Because I always
Henderson,
have a
Madison,
quick couple of
Transylvania
slides.
counties,
Or essentially the French Broad River
but
NPO planning area, as well as the Land of Sky Rural Planning Organization planning area. So looking at some of the data,
we are
on,
hoping to get this board's
youth,
blessing
bicycle,
for
and
putting in an
pedestrian
application
crashes
in our
position.
region.
And
So
generally
that would
speaking, we
enable
have
us to
hire
more than we
safe
prefer.
routes to school
This
coordinator
is
to
data
cover
from
our
NCDOT
and
for
help do things
youth
like
involved
walk to school
or
events,
people under
bike to
18,
school events, help
that
do
were involved
safety
in bicycle
audits,
and pedestrian
crashes. We had
for each
number of safety
counties
audits
that we're
done by the
discussing,
previous coordinator in Haywood County,
and
that I think were
again,
really
this
helpful.
is something that
Tools to
we
help
see
get
as
people
something
more
we really
aware
like
of
to
some
help
of the safety
reduce,
issues,
and we see
for
this
students
position
walking
as
and
playing a
biking
key
to
role in
school.
that.
One of
really
the,
doing a lot of the
key things to point out is
encouragement
that
and education
per the
that I think
application
our
requirements,
region
the
could really
MPO is not allowed to
I
be
do
or is not
have
eligible.
just a quick couple of
To
slides
be
to
the
go through,
applicant, but Land of Sky
because
Regional
I always
Council
have a
is.
quick couple of slides.
So we've talked with Land of Sky Regional Council's
but
leadership about the COG being the kind of lead applicant.
So looking at some of the data
and
on
the
youth bicycle
per
and
the
pedestrian
application
crashes
requirements
in our
0% local match is required.
However,
generally
if
speaking, we
NCDOT
have
does receive
more than we
enough,
prefer.
this
Applications
is data
that
from
request more money
NCDOT
than is available
for
they may
youth
work with
involved
applicants
or
on
people
providing
under
local
18.
but at this
that were
point,
involved in bicycle
we are
and
not
pedestrian
asking
crashes
for additional local dues
for each
to
of
go
our
after this
counties
grant
that
we
we're
are discussing.
that we can get it with the 0%
So
local
again,
share.
this is something that we see as something
so
we really like.
the
The
applications
applications are due in
and we
early
see
February.
this position as playing a key role in
again,
that.
we are hoping to get this board's blessing on pursuing key things to point out is that per the application requirements, the MPO is not allowed to be or is not eligible to be the applicant, but Land of Sky Regional Council is. So we've talked with Land of Sky Regional Council leadership about the kind of lead applicant.
As a parent of children who
and
participate in bike and walk to school events,
the application
I would
requirements,
happily
a
make this
0%
motion.
local match is required. However, if NCDOT does receive enough applications that request more money than is available, they may work with applicants on providing it. But at this point, we are not
DOT
asking
Division
for
14,
additional
Chuck
fees
McGrady.
to go after this
Aye.
grant. We are hoping that
Buncombe County,
we
Parker
can get it with
Sloan.
the 0% local share.
Buncombe County, Amanda Edwards.
So the
Aye.
applications are due in early
Fletcher,
February.
Bob Davy.
And again,
Aye.
we are hoping to get this
Haywood
board's
County,
blessing
Kevin
on
Inslee.
pursuing this
Aye.
funding to get a
Hendersonville,
position
Jennifer
for
Hensley.
Safe Routes to School
Aye.
coordinator.
Laurel Park, George Banta.
Aye.
Madison County, Matt
So
Wexel.
you're looking for
Aye.
approval to file for the grant?
Mills River, Shannon
Yes.
John.
Aye.
One Tree, Tom Whitmer.
Sorry, as a
Well,
parent
let
of
me
children
ask
who
this, I may be out of order, but
participate
there
in
was
bike
no
and walk to
opportunity
school
for
events,
discussion.
I
just
would
have a
happily
question.
make this motion.
How long is the funding term on this, Tristan?
Do I have a
Uh,
second?
If it's long, if it's only a year, that's tough to hire a coordinator and not be able to
This is the
give
last
any
one.
long range.
DOT Division 14, Chuck
Hope
McGrady.
for opportunity to the coordinator.
Buncombe County, Parker
That's a great
Sloan.
question, and sorry for not covering that sooner. The application
Buncombe
is
County,
for up to
Amanda
3
Edwards.
years, and we plan
Aye.
to apply for a full 3 years of
Fletcher,
funding
Bob
for the
Davy.
position. If
Aye.
nothing else, to spare us additional
Haywood County, Kevin
applications
Inslee.
year after year. But we do hope
Hendersonville,
getting that
Jennifer
funding
Hensley.
stability in there
Aye.
for a 3-year period.
Laurel
would,
Park, George
be
Banta.
very helpful.
Okay, well then you have an eye from me.
Madison County, Matt Wexel.
Aye.
Waynesville River, Shannon John.
I apologize for not opening up. for-
On Treat, Tom Whitmer. And Weaverville, Catherine Cordell.
Well, let me ask this, I may
Yeah,
be
I
out
have
of order, but there was no opportunity for
I think
discussion.
that covers all
I
our
just have a
business
question.
items for today.
How
I know that
long
we had
is the
people that had
funding
jump
term
off
on
for
this,
other
Tristan?
obligations.
It would- If
Next
it's
is the
long,
informational
if it's
item.
only a year,
Is the performance
that's
target.
tough to hire a coordinator and
I'm gonna talk
not
about
be able
performance targets
to
today.
give any long range opportunity.
So as of 2016 or in 2016, the Federal Highway Administration.
That's a great
established
question,
5
and
highway
sorry for
safety
not
performance
covering that
measures,
sooner. The application is
regulations
for
set
up to
forth
3 years, and we
with
plan
the
to apply
Federal
for a
MAP
full 3
21
years
and
of
Fast
funding for
Act
the
Transportation
position.
Funding Bill.
If nothing
That,
else, to spare
those
us
5
additional
performance measures
applications
are
year after year.
fatality rate,
But
serious
we
injury,
do hope
serious
getting that
injury
funding
rate, and
stability in there
non-motorized fatality and
for a
serious
3-year
injury.
period. would
And they're measured
be
on a
very
5-year
helpful.
average.
Okay.
North
Then you have an
Carolina
eye
state
for me.
targets are set in agreement with Strategic Highway Safety Plan goals, and our
Waynesville and
current
27.
goals are to reduce
And I
fatalities
apologize
and
for not
serious
opening up
injuries
for comment.
by half by 2035.
And Weaverville,
moving towards
Catherine
zero by
Cordell.
2050.
Yeah, I have.
So this table is our
I think
5-year
that covers
average.
all of our
The
business
MPO's
items.
5-year average,
Because I know that we had
2020
people that had to jump off
data.
for
So
other
on the
obligations.
left-hand
Uh,
column, under
next is the
5-year rolling
informational
averages
item.
was our target for each
Is
category.
the performance
And then the
target.
middle one is our actual. I'm gonna talk about and the one on the right is our baseline. So as of 2016 or in 2016, the Federal Highway Administration established 5 highway safety performance measures. 5-year average period, we didn't achieve any of the targets with the federal map do better than our baseline in terms of fatalities. Those 5 performance measures, fatality rates, kind of serious injuries, serious injury rates, and non-motorized fatality injuries. And they're measured on a 5-year average. We haven't met the state target, but we are in agreement with, and each highway safety plan goals set by our current goals are to reduce fatalities and serious injuries by half by 2035, moving towards zero by 2050. The next one shows, so this table is our 5-year average, similar to MPO, the 5-year average serious injuries, 2020 data. There's a little bit more like gap, but it's still a similar trend. 5-year rolling averages was our target for each category. Serious injuries, and then the middle one, the last one is the non-motorized fatalities and serious injuries. The right is and these slides with the charts are up on our website on our agenda metrics on our agenda page. For this 5-year average period, we didn't achieve any of the targets, but we did do better than 2 options. So the first one is to adopt some targets that are defined by the state methodology. And I have a few charts on the next slide. Methodology to define our own targets, and that will require the MPO to hire someone to kind of consistently monitor our metrics. You can see we haven't met the goals each year, but we are moving closer, and each of these goals are set by. This chart shows our actual metrics for each year, 5-year average with them for fatality rate, serious injury rate. The next one shows fatalities and injuries. And then in the red at the bottom, the next one shows serious injury metrics if we adopted the state's methodology. Which there's a little bit more of a gap, but needs to be made next month. So this is not an action item. The next one is the rate of serious injuries. And the last one is the non-motorized fatalities and serious injuries. And these slides, the charts are up on our website, on our agenda, on our agenda page, probably, yeah. So, yeah, the chart show options on the next slide for 2021. We're kind of looking at 2 options. So the first one is to adopt these targets that are defined by the state methodology. So or we could use a different methodology to define our own targets, and that would require the MPO to hire someone to kind of consistently monitor our metrics each month. And I don't believe we have done that in the past. So this chart shows our actual metrics for each year, 5-year average for fatality rate, serious injury rate, and non-motorized fatalities and injuries.
Sorry,
in the red at the bottom,
just really
that's
quickly,
our
something I'd point out is that the typical process that's put out in the federal regulations is that the state sets these targets, and they usually do so in a collaborative manner with MPO representatives. So the state sets those targets, and MPOs have, I believe, up to 6 months to either adopt targets that are in line with the state, or to go their own path and set their own targets. One reason we're bringing this up as an informational item this month and bringing it back for voting next month is February is when our targets are due to federal highways. And in the past, this is an item that has generated quite a bit of discussion. So we wanted to make sure that the information is out there for our board members to consider. In the past, something that, we've discussed is going our own route.
Sorry, just really quickly, something I'd point out is that the typical
information
process
that's
I
put
would
out
pass
in
along
federal regulations is that the state sets these targets. And they usually do so in a collaborative manner, at least not at this point, with MPO representatives. So changing the state sets those targets, something like that. MPOs have doesn't necessarily, I believe, up to 6 months to either adopt targets that are in line with the state. Or at this point, it's go their own path, and this is something we've brought up. One reason we're bringing this up as an informational item, trying to find a better way to connect these targets to funding, bringing it back for voting as of right now is that is not the case. February is when our targets are due. Something that we're federal highways to work with. And in the past, this is an item that has generated quite a bit of discussion. So we wanted to make sure that the information is out there for our board members to consider. In the past, something that,
in all honesty,
we discussed
first
is
MPO
going our own
North Carolina
route
to go our own way.
MPO targets. My understanding of it is that the information I would monitoring pass along is that on MPO on that doesn't change investment patterns. There really would not be any changing safety target or something like that in terms of doesn't necessarily transportation or funding available project selection to pursue safety projects. So at this point, it's yes, my understanding is considerably more so. DOT folks in Raleigh is trying to find a better way to connect these targets to funding, but as of right now, that is not the case. So that's something that we're hoping to continue to work with DOT on in the future.
Next is the 2020 urbanized area. That's video on this spot. You're back. What would be the consequences if we went our own way?
Okay, so just as a quick refresher, the first MPO in North Carolina to go urbanized area, and my understanding of it is that it would really put orientation monitoring requirements on MPO on the MPO, but the urbanized area is something that's delineated by the U.S. Census Bureau after every decennial census. So every decade, 2000, 2010, in terms of now 2020. The U.S. Census Bureau utilizes data from the census as well as some other sources, particularly with land cover, to help delineate areas that are urban. Yes, my understanding is considerably more so. So,
just wanted to get that out there, but while people were doing it for the next month.
There we go. One of the big things for consideration with the urbanized boundary and how it relates to the MPO.
Next is the 2020 urbanized area.
What we've kind of cautiously put out there in the past, we don't draw the urbanized boundaries, and this is done by the U.S. Census Bureau. Okay, but so just as a quick refresher, the MPO's boundaries, the federal urbanized area planning boundaries has to at least encompass all of the orientation area that we've done in the past, as identified from the Census Bureau. But the urbanized area is something that's delineated by the U.S. Census Bureau after every decennial census. So it's at least the urbanized area, 2000, 2010. But an important thing to point out for the federal regs, the U.S. Census Bureau utilizes data from the census as well as some other sources, the contiguous urbanized area with land cover to help delineate areas for those urban who were on the board that are rural. A few years ago, we did growth projection and land use study to get an idea of how much growth to expect. One of the big things for consideration that growth is likely with the urbanized boundary and how it relates to the MPO. Again, the important thing to emphasize is what we've got of MPO has put out there. At least the urbanized area, we don't draw the urbanized boundaries to be included by the U.S. Census Bureau in the next 20 years. But in terms of how that impacts the MPO's boundaries, is that the MPO's planning boundaries has to kind of go from encompass this as our urbanized area to this as identified from the Census Bureau. And just to point out, so for us, that is what the Census Bureau identifies as this organization has existed since 1966. So it's at least the urbanized area centered around Asheville, but an important thing to point out per the federal regs, and Haywood is it's also what we anticipate becoming Madison contiguous urbanized area over the next 20 years. 2010. So for those of you who are on the board, a few years ago, one of the big things with growth projection and a land use study to decennial census, get an idea of how much criteria would change in our region by 2045. This board that growth is likely to occur at least 2 times. So when the criteria is being considered, to emphasize is the MPO has to be at least the urbanized changes that I'll point out, although there's been quite a lot of changes in the next 20 years, is that a big part of the initial identification of the urban area has changed from population density to housing density, urbanized boundary to this as our planning boundary. That's something that just to point out, in our region, growing region, helps to pull in kind of more of those seasonal homes since 1966. Or second homes. It started centered around Asheville and really haven't been included as urban in the past. Henderson and Haywood have been part of really one of the most consequential that we see in terms of the release of this data. Pennsylvania is changing what they call the jump distance from 2.5 miles to 1.5 miles. But one of the big things jump is essentially this: if you have decennial census, is areas identified as urban changed. This is something they are separated. This board previously less than 2.5 miles. When the criteria was being considered, just connect the two. A couple of key changes that I'll point out, although there's criteria for quite a lot of changes, 1.5 miles, is that a big part of the initial identification for those of you who look closely has changed from population density to housing density as much as I do, as has been you'll notice there's a number of jumps around our region. Some of them helps to pull in kind of more of those seasonal homes. So this is the 2010 urbanized area or second homes. And one of the largest ones really haven't been included as urban in the past, and Canton. But really one of the most consequential that we see in between in terms of the release of this data, another is changing what they call the jump distance from Buncombe County, 2.5 miles to 1.5 miles. And one that we've kind of talked about the jump is essentially Henderson County. If you have what's called or what's been called areas identified as urban cluster, and they are separated by previously less than 2.5 miles. But with the change in jumps, the Census Bureau we found just the initial data release was, and we actually have 3 new urbanized areas. The criteria for that is now 2 new urbanized areas. The Waynesville urbanized area, which is actually quite large. It's almost a population of 25,000. Urbanized area, it stretches through Maggie Valley up Jonathan Creek Road. You'll notice there's a number of jumps around our region. There's also now some of them urbanized, fairly large. That includes a population so this is the 2010 urbanized area. And one of the largest ones is kind of between and also going down south and Canton. There's another corridor close to Clyde and also the Brevard urbanized area. Another going up to Mars Hill, its own independent entity from Buncombe County, and one that we've kind of talked just about recently. The maps were finally released to reflect what's been called areas. Brevard urbanized so what you see highlighted is the Asheville urbanized area for 2020. But with the change available jumps to the U.S. Census Bureau's found from the initial data release was we actually have 3 new urbanized areas. Essentially, the gap between 2 new urbanized areas. The Waynesville urbanized area in Buncombe County is actually quite large. It's almost a population of 25,000. Again, it stretches maximum distance allowed up Jonathan Creek Road, 2.5 miles. It's now 1.5. The actual gap there's also now the Canton urbanized area. That includes a population of more than 8,800 people. Includes quite the town of Canton there, also kind of going down south. Our staff did produce a map that I hope is helpful, and also the Brevard urbanized area available has kind of remained. It should be in your agenda packet as well as the slides that are available online. So, but what you see there in yellow, the maps the urbanized area finally released to stayed the same between 2010 areas. 2020. So what you see highlighted is red. Asheville urbanized area that was considered urbanized in 2010. We've made the link available to the U.S. Census Bureau's maps are no longer identified as urban. But as you can see, the green is where the urban essentially the gap between Canton. So we've kind of had a thread between Canton and Buncombe County with growth of the urban area as well as contraction in a number of again, the maximum distance allowed used to be 2.5 miles. It's now 1.5. The other thing that we're still looking into again is pulling in kind of the where do we expect the urban area to expand over the next 20 years. A change there. So our staff did produce a map green. I hope is helpful. Kind of where we consider we've also made this link available. A lot of it should be in your agenda packet as well as in our region that are available online. 25 years. But what you see there in yellow is the urbanized area that stayed the same between 2010 and 2020. In the future, what is red is some general information was considered urbanized in 2010 and is no longer in the urbanized area. The Asheville urbanized area and no longer identified as urban. Haywood County has kind of been cut, and the green is where the Asheville urbanized area still grew. So we've kind of square miles had a mix of the Asheville urbanized area, growth of the urban area, as well as contraction in a number of areas over 10 years. And the other thing that we're still looking into again is pulling in kind of the where do we expect the urban area to expand over the next 20 years. Pointed out so very helpfully, I think, what you see in yellow and green, even though North Carolina's urban population is growing, where we expect still has the second largest rural population in our region about just 20 to 25 years. But one of the things to point out will be the growth rate in urbanized population to bring more than 10.5% for the state. Whereas some general information, area, it's a little less than 2%. Even though one of the things to point out there is that Asheville urbanized area, the MPO planning funds, at least as of right now, County is distributed largely based. The Asheville urbanized area still grew urbanized population, even though it's square miles. So the amount of funding that we receive from the Asheville urbanized area grew from is largely based on this 285 number here. There's more to it than that, but that does play a big factor in how much planning funding. But North Carolina's urbanized population grew quite a lot. Some next steps that we'll be working through, Genevieve and Cooley is pointed out. We'll be discussing this very helpfully. Local governments to consider the direction. Even though that would be preferable for them, population is growing. It still has the
And
second
so,
largest rural population
FYI,
one way or another,
but just
behind
Texas.
We are planning to update how one of the things to calculated is utilizing the growth rate and urbanized population. Just as a reminder, for the state, dues-paying members of the MPO, whereas for Asheville urbanized area, it's a little less than 2%. Their portion, based on the percentage there, is that of population, the MPO planning funds, at least as of right now, are distributed largely based on your urbanized population. Member government, so the amount of funding that we receive leave the MPO operations, that is something is largely based on needing to update our memorandum of understanding. There's more to it than that, but that does play a big factor that requires a sign off from every member government. And just to point out, the due structure would be likely to significantly some change. Next steps that we'll be working through is and just to point out, likely impacts to Haywood, to consider the direction. The big thing here is transit for them. The Asheville urbanized area is FYI large, one way or another, urban area. We are planning to update how our dues are calculated, and so utilizing the 2020 population numbers. Just as a reminder, transit formula funds that are considered large urban, or they come to the city of Asheville, their portion are distributed to the sub-recipients of population within the MPO. It's my understanding, at least as of right now, is that Haywood County is likely to shift to small urban funds, and which would any either member government, NCDOT, chooses to leave the MPO. That is something that is likely needing to update our memorandum of understanding, how they access, and that's a document that requires a sign off from every member government. Just some questions that I get on this pretty regularly would be likely MPO membership change does determine if that were to happen, eligibility for accessing. Just to point out, likely impacts to Haywood, as well as the big thing here is transit grant funds, SDBGA, the Asheville Urbanized Area program considered a large urban area. It has a population of now 200,000 bipartisan infrastructure bill. It gets funds that are but the urban transit formula funds that are considered large urban, that there is no decision, or they come to the city of Asheville imminently and are distributed to the sub-recipients of the potentially review any boundaries. It's my understanding, at least as of right now, that Haywood County is likely to shift to smaller awaiting more guidance, which would be either through as well as NCDOT or understand. There's a so that is likely being worked on that will be distributed to the MPOs, at least how they access in the next few weeks transit funds that'll provide further direction. And just some questions that I get on this pretty regularly. That's all I've got for today, but does determine it is eligibility for accessing planning funds through the MPO. As well as the Surface Transportation Block Grant Funds, SDBGDA, the Transportation Alternative Programs Funds, as well as comments, Carbon Reduction Program funds that we are now getting.
It looks like
bipartisan
the whole region of Mills River has been removed from the 2020 map.
My understanding is that there is no decision.
How does that particularly affect the town of Mills River and our position on the MPO?
Do want to go that's something that we can get into more. We are awaiting. So I would say that, especially when we look at FHWA, I understand where we anticipate there to be a lot of growth that is being worked on that over the next 20 years. The MPOs, sometime in the next few weeks, you're certainly that'll provide as well aware of their direction. Mills River is growing quite a bit. And we anticipate all I've got for today, but so from my point of view, a big important topic, even though to make sure there's been some changes in this round, I would anticipate Mills River coming back into the urban area. Are there any questions or comments? That's at least me eyeballing it.
It looks like the whole region of Mills River has been removed from the 2020 map. So how does that particularly affect the town of Mills River and our position on the MPO?
This is Bob Davey. I've got one question, Tristan.
So
you said that you hope that Mills River
when we look at
falls in the urban category relatively soon.
A lot of growth,
but are we going to have to wait until the next 10-year census to have that happen?
you're certainly as well aware as anyone.
That's a good question.
Mills
First of all,
River
I
is
mean,
growing quite a
hope,
bit, and we
uh,
anticipate more of
I
that
have no
growth to
hope,
happen.
Bob.
So from my point of view,
No, I mean,
even
by that, I
though,
mean, you know,
there's been some changes
the land
in
use
this
decisions
round,
and growth decisions.
I would
that's,
anticipate
a locally
Mills River
driven
coming
issue.
back into the urban area.
So
relatively
just to
soon.
point out, I mean, in terms of
That's
hope,
at least
anything like that, I have no real take on that. I think that's a local government decision. But again, you know, the general process is trying to understand where we anticipate the urban area to expand over the next 20 years. So we do have some of that data.
This is Bob Davy. I've got
available,
one
that we can
question,
use to discuss.
Kristen. You said that you hope
You know, I
that
will
Mills
say
River
that is
falls
something
in the
that,
urban category relatively
it
soon.
changes a lot.
But
the growth
are we going to
conversations
have to
around
wait
our
till the
region,
next 10-year
you know,
census
they are
to have that
happening
happen?
all the time. So definitely getting the local
that's a good
government's,
question. First of all, I
point
mean,
of view
hope
on this issue and getting their preferences.
I have no
think
hope,
is what
Bob.
we'll be discussing over the next few months.
No, I mean, by that, I mean, you know,
Thank you.
the land use decisions and growth decisions, that's a locally driven issue. So just to point out, I mean, in terms of hope or anything like that, I have no real take on that. I think that's a local government decision. But again, you know, the general process is trying to understand where we anticipate the urban area to expand over the next 20 years. So we do have some of that data available that we can use to discuss. You know, I will say that is something that, you know, it changes a lot. The growth conversations around our region, you know, they are happening all the time. So definitely getting the local government's point of view on this issue and getting their preferences, I think is what
Stefan, could you provide an update to the board on Sweet Creek Road?
I believe they've gotten, and they're looking into whether a 3-lane highway in terms of the right-of-way impacts would be just, what would be the difference in impacts to the 4-lane divider that's currently being used. And I don't necessarily know that anything's come back, but the belief is that the impacts, the reductions, we're not going to see enough cost savings for us to say, well, we'll just do a 3-lane. The only one in the 4-lane is regular updates. So the other thing is just exactly. I think they're put there on the comes back. We'll decide on whether we want to on the screen. And anybody has any questions with I think it's 8NAA, whether it's the construction or section of I-26, proposed I-26.
Stefan, could you
exit out to Boulevard.
Stefan, could you provide an update to the board
Those are the only
on Sweet Creek
updates
Road?
that I have, and I think we're still waiting. I believe they've gotten numbers. They're looking into whether a
Right, thank you.
3-lane
So,
highway,
just as a little bit of
the right-of-way
background for the
impact would be
board,
just
as
what
we
would be the
discussed
difference in
quite a
impact
bit,
to the 4-lane divider that's
the
currently
cost increases that we've
being
seen across the
used,
board for
and
transportation
I
projects
don't necessarily know that
is
anything's
kind
come
of what
back,
led to
but
the draft 2024 through
the belief
2033
is that the
STIP.
impacts, the reductions,
So
not going to be enough cost
one of the
savings
key
for
things
us
there
to
is
say, well, we'll
that
just do a
Sweet
3-lane
Creek right now
in
is
lieu
in
of the
there as a
4-lane
widening to a
that's
4-lane
code.
road
The
from
other
US
thing is,
25
depending on
with
just
Airport
exactly how
Road,
the
Hendersonville
estimate
Road intersection up to Rock Hill
comes
Road.
back, we'll
That's currently
decide
in the
on
draft
whether we
STIP
want
at, I
to
believe,
maybe
$195
swap
million.
Sweet Creek with
DOT
I think
recently
it's
received a more
8NAA, which
updated
is
estimate
the
that
section
is,
of I-26,
Stefan, correct me if I'm
proposed
wrong,
I-26
around
from
240
USDA
million.
exit out to yeah, we do have that one, and but those are the only definitely gone. I have. And we're still waiting on some of those.
So one of the things
numbers
that we've
come
been
back.
discussing with the division is
Right,
how we
thank
can
you.
find
So,
a way to
just
reduce
as
the
a little
cost
bit
of
of
the
background
project for the board, so that we aren't potentially risking having the cost increases that we've seen across the board for transportation projects.
Buncombe County as well as
Is kind of
City of
what
Asheville
led to
staff on
the
this,
draft 2024 through
and
2033
to make
STIP.
sure that
We at least have
so
options.
one
One
of
of
the
the
key
key things there is that As a reminder, right now, this board is in there as a widening to a 4-lane road. Consider any project from US 25 March or the airport road, Henderson of this year intersection up to Rock Hill. We already have a swap currently in the draft from Henderson County, I believe $195 million. This is one that DOT recently, as Stefan mentioned, will be a weighted estimate, updated information to see if a swap needs to be considered around 240 million that could stay on the STIP.
We do have that one, and it has definitely gone up. And I'll check up with Steve.
So one of the things that we've been discussing with the division is how we can find a way to reduce the cost of the project, so that we aren't potentially risking having that project fall off the draft STIP.
Any other questions for Division 13?
We've been coordinating with Buncombe County as well as City of Asheville staff on this, and trying to make sure that we at least have options about what's being considered. As a reminder, this board will be asked to consider any project swaps
on the project development side, just real brief for the folks that are new to the board.
We already have a swap requested from Henderson
RW, those columns to the right there, R/W, that's for right-of-way acquisition. And Tristan mentioned this, but there's 4 columns up there because of the situation that we're in with our current funding. We had to redo our state transportation improvement program, and that's why you see those extra columns that says draft 2004 to 2000.
And I'll check up with Steve.
Those are not official dates yet, and I anticipate that they will be.
A different typical section.
Division 13 spreadsheet formatted the same way. And if you see either not funded in that draft columns or funded for preliminary engineering only, that means if it's preliminary engineering only, there's funding for the design but not for the construction. If it says not funded, then those are the projects that had to be removed from the STIP. Okay, hopefully that's not too confusing. And you can find these updates on the project development side. Just real brief, it's on the same page as the agendas. RW, those call the same projects we've been seeing. That's why right away acquisition. And Tristan mentioned this, but there's 4 columns up there because of the situation that we're in with our current funding. We had to redo our city questions on the Haywood program, and that's why you see those extra columns. It's draft 2004 to 2033 STIP. On the those are not official dates yet, but we anticipate that they will be. Division 13 spreadsheets formatted the same Haywood County, and if you see either not funded, note that on I-40, that's the third funded for road engineering only. That means if it's preliminary engineering only, there's funding for the design or change in I-40. If it says not funded, then those are the projects that in there, so beware from traveling in that direction. The intersection of Walnut and Main Street, and you can find these updates on the Frisco River MPO website. It's on the same page as the agenda, pretty much complete. It's going to be going under the roundabout. The same projects we've been seeing were in there quite some time, so the folks that are best to do so. Of course, I-26 in Henderson County, the same thing that's been ongoing for a while. If anybody has any questions on Haywood or Henderson County, that includes Blue Ridge Parkway. But there's lots of traffic shifts as they're getting lanes completed in one direction and then shifting traffic over. Construction side of things. I-26, continuing with that, if you get out of the mess on I-26 in Henderson County and Haywood County, South Carolina, you'll encounter the green road that on I-40, the two eastbound, 2 westbound lanes are currently still bridge projects as they're working in the middle of the bridge. US 76 interchange and I-40. I-40 is down to 1 lane in each direction there, so beware if you're traveling in that direction. On Lake Road, the intersection of Walnut and Main Street and out there quite full time. Well, it hasn't started, but it's just by there some drainage ago and the drainage work and erosion going under the roundabout. The problem is the contractor can't get staff best to do so, staff employed. Of course, I-26 in Henderson County, same thing that's been ongoing for a while. Same contract, 14 doesn't have a full bridge, and that's a statewide connecting to Blue Ridge Parkway. But there's lots of traffic shifts as they're getting lanes completed in one direction, and that shifting traffic have all been moved up for quite some time. I-26, continue with that. If you get out of the mess, I-26 in Henderson County, one of the projects in South Carolina, you'll encounter the Green River Bridge. all lanes, two eastbound, two westbound lanes are currently still open, as they're working on the middle of the bridge. Once that's completed, then they'll shift traffic. So, we'll let you know when that's about to happen, for that traffic shift. Highland Lake Road, our project is kind of hanging out there for quite some time. It has been started, but it's just, some drainage work and, erosion control. The problem is the contractor can't get staff, can't keep staff employed,
monthly freight
for these
bulletin
projects.
for December, which covers November data.
That same
For the new board members,
and that's a statewide problem. It's not just.
I'll say that North Carolina's Freight and Logistics Department puts out this monthly bulletin. So if you have any interest in freight or kind of congestion, it's a short 2-page read every month, and provides totals for like how much cost of delay there was. This is all using real-time monitoring data. And in case you don't think it applies to your area, 4 of the top 10 most congested bottlenecks last month were in the MPO. That includes both directions at exit 20 in Clyde.
Okay, I don't have
Canton and exit 44 down in Flat Rock. But I'll just speak very briefly from the and this was mainly driven monthly by freight bulletin, some sort of for December or covers November data. So things like construction for the new board members, things like animals in the road and other things that say that short-term North Carolina's freight and logistics, but some of them lasting up to 5 hours. Out this monthly bulletin. So and this top 10 list interest changes over every month. So it's a kind of congestion, interesting dynamic to watch. It's a short, the rest of the bulletin goes over other items like supply chain issues and maritime and freight issues. Provides totals for like how much cost of delay there was. This is all using real time monitoring. So if you want to subscribe to that, and we'll get you the email. It's don't think it applies to your area. 4 of the top 10 most congested bottlenecks last month. Otherwise, I look forward to talking to you in the next few months. That includes both directions at exit 20 in Clyde, exit 33 in Canton, and exit 44 down in Flat Rock and Fletcher. And this was mainly driven by some sort of event or incident.
Hello,
so
everyone.
Things like construction, things like crashes, things like
Tristan
animals on the
did a
road,
really good job of
and other things that
the,
cause
census
short-term
boundaries,
disruptions
the new
in
urbanized
traffic,
area
but some of them
boundaries.
lasting up to 5
we
hours.
heard that you'll need to decide
And
what
this
your
top 10
20-year planning
changes
boundary is
over
going to
every
be,
month, so
and
it's
that will
a
inform
interesting dynamic to watch.
all your planning.
The rest of the
efforts
bulletin
going
goes over
forward,
other items
including
like supply
your
chain
update to your
issues,
metropolitan transportation
maritime
plan,
and freight
et cetera.
issues, and
still a lot of grant
inventory and sales
opportunities
issues.
Out there.
So if you want to subscribe to that,
some guidance coming out soon.
We'll get you the
for,
email. It's
census boundaries.
Dana Magnoli at that branch. Email Tristan.
Other than that,
we'll
that's
get you connected.
about all I had for this.
Otherwise,
month.
I look forward to talking
Unless
to you
there are any
more in
questions.
the next few months.
Questions for Bill? Any questions for Daniel? Thank you. I'm guessing this is Tristan for the subcommittee and work group report. Okay. Moving up to the FHWA.
Yes, I won't go through this line for line, but please note that we're adding a bit more of a summary to our subcommittee reports.
Tristan did a really good job of covering the census
are
boundaries and the
reactivating.
urbanized area
Thank
boundaries.
you, Scott, on our team for
We
reactivating our
heard
transit
that
operators
you'll
work
need
group
to
for the region,
decide what your
as
20-year
well as our
planning boundary is
5307
going to
subrecipients
be,
work
and
group.
that will inform.
So
all your
you
planning
do have a
efforts
summary
going
of
forward,
all the
including
activities.
your update to
The
your metropolitan
prioritization
transportation
subcommittee,
plan,
we
et cetera.
continue to throw item after item.
Still a lot
at
of
them.
grant
So thank you to all
opportunities
the
out
subcommittee
there.
members there.
We may
Also,
have some
the
guidance
Hellbender
coming
Trail
out
work
soon
group,
for
that is something that is
census
working on
boundaries,
Greenway
as
Summit for
Tristan
later this
mentioned.
year. If that's
And other than
something
that, that's
you'd be
about all I
interested
had for this
in
month. Unless there are
joining the
any
meetings
questions.
for, please let Hannah on our team know.
Questions for Bill?
But
I will leave it at that. Besides
I'm guessing this is
subcommittees,
president for subcommittee and work
as you
group
may
report.
notice, I am not in Nashville. I am in Raleigh at
Yes,
the
I
North
won't
Carolina
go through this
Transportation
line for
Summit.
line, but please
So
note that we're
Holiday
adding
Inn
a bit
has
more
graciously
of a
let
summary
me
to our
check out
subcommittee
later,
reports,
so that I can join
our
this meeting remotely.
subcommittees are reactivating.
But thank you, Scott, on our
So
team
a lot
for
of good
reactivating
events
our
and,
transit operators
some
work group
potential
for the region,
informational speakers,
as well as
for
our
later this
5307 sub-recipients work group.
So
A couple of other
items.
items.
You
in
do have
terms
a summary of
all the
legislative
the prioritization
updates.
subcommittee. We continue to throw item after item at them.
Slides go.
So thank you to all the
no activity
members there
that we've seen
at the
also
state level,
the
at least as
Hellbender
of yet.
Trail work group.
But
that is something
a
that
few
is working
things
on Greenway
from
Summit
for later this year.
the federal
If that's
level,
something
guidance
you'd be
on
interested
greenhouse
in,
gas rules
joining the meetings for
came out earlier
please
this
let
month.
Hannah on our
That's
team
a
new item that was
but,
part of the
I
bipartisan
will leave it
infrastructure
at
bill.
that.
Besides,
So
subcommittees,
there's now guidance out on that.
as you may notice, I'm not in Nashville. I am in
FTA
Raleigh
areas
at the
of
North Carolina
persistent poverty
Transportation
program
Summit issued a notice of funding
So Holiday Inn
opportunity or
has
NOFO.
graciously let me check
That
out later.
was
Sent
so
along
that I
to
can
our
join this meeting
transit
remotely,
operators in our region,
but
to potentially pursue.
so a lot of good events.
Also,
and,
the
some
EPA has
potential
announced
informational
its
speakers,
intention to
for later
propose
this year.
reducing
The
a
particulate
couple
matter
of other
standards,
items in terms of
from
the
12
legislative
parts per million to
updates.
9 to 10 parts per million.
So
we're
we're
anticipating that
So
coming out,
no
at some
activity
point soon.
that we've seen at the
Um,
state level, at least as of
One
yet.
thing that I was very
but,
excited to
a few
see,
things
and
from,
we get this question a ton,
the federal
is
level,
when information on
guidance
specific
on
federal
greenhouse
grants
gas rules
is expected to come
came
out.
Federal
Earlier this
Highways
month.
did put
That's
together
a
new
new
item
item
that
that
was
was
part
part
of
of
the
when they
bipartisan
anticipate
infrastructure
the
bill.
notice of funding opportunities coming out.
So there is
The
now
link to
guidance
that
out on
is
that.
available below.
The
But very, very
FTA
helpful.
areas of
I know
persistent
we have a few
poverty
communities that have been
program
interested
issued
in
a notice
specific
of funding
programs.
opportunity or NOFO.
So hopefully that'll be a good
That
resource.
was
Sent along to our
and,
transit operators
finally,
in our region,
from
to
NCDOT,
potentially
just a
pursue.
reminder that the Bike Helmet
Also,
Initiative
the
is
EPA has announced
accepting
its
applications
intention
through
to
February
propose
3rd.
reducing
That's something
the
quite a
particulate
few of
matter
our local governments,
standards,
as well as a couple of
from
nonprofits in the region,
12
have taken
parts per
advantage
million
of.
to 9 to 10 parts per
So,
million.
if
So
your
we're
local
anticipating
government is
that
interested
coming out,
and
at some
needs
point
any
soon.
assistance, please let us know.
One
But,
thing that
that
I
is
was
something our
very,
region's done a
very
great job
excited
of
to
taking
see,
advantage of
and
in the
we
past.
get this question a ton,
But that's all
is
we've
when
got
information
for
on specific
staff
federal
and
grants
legislative updates.
is expected to come out. Federal Highways did
I
put
would like
together
to make a comment that there
a
is
chart
an opening
of
on
when they
the
anticipate the notice of funding
prioritization
opportunities coming
subcommittee.
out.
Claire Harris is no
The
longer
link
with
to
us.
that is available
So,
below. But very,
I've been
very
on that committee
helpful.
for quite a
I
few
know we
years,
have
and
a
I would
few
encourage
communities
anyone
that
to
have
come
been
join
interested
us,
in
which
specific
we call
programs.
nitty-gritty
So hopefully that'll
subcommittee.
be a good
We
resource.
lots of work, so anyone's interested, please let Chris know.
Finally, from
Chris, also, are we
NCDOT,
going
just a
to be having a
reminder that
workshop
the
for
Bike
new
Helmet
members?
Initiative is
Yes, great
accepting
question.
applications
We
through
typically
February
have
3rd.
orientation
That's
for new
something,
members in late
quite a
February.
few of our local
So we'll
governments,
be
as well as a couple of
setting a date for
nonprofits in the
that
region,
relatively soon and
have
sending
taken
that
advantage
out.
of. So
Per the usual,
if
if
your
have
local
any
government
questions
is interested,
anything
and,
at the time,
needs any
please
assistance,
don't
please let
hesitate
us
to
know.
reach out.
But
Very well
that is
aware
something our
that
region's
we
done a great
often
job of
speak in
taking advantage of in
acronyms,
the
even
past.
though we try very hard not
But
to.
that's
I
all we've
swear.
got for staff and
So
legislative
any
updates.
questions on any items, please don't hesitate to reach out,
I would like to
and we'll
make
plan
a
for that
comment
event
there is
later in
an
February.
opening on the prioritization subcommittee. So I think that covers our announcements, news, and special updates. I've been on the committee for like quite a few years, and I would encourage anyone of you that are on that board, which we call it the nitty-gritty.
Yes, so we'll be bringing back the
anyone
safety
interested,
targets for
please
this
let
board's
Chris know.
consideration. That is
Chris,
something
also, are
that
we
is a
going to
federal
be having a
requirement.
workshop for new
We'll also
members?
be bringing forth the
Yes, great question.
MPO's
We
Unified
typically
Planning
have
Work Program
orientation
That's
for new
essentially our
members
budget.
in late February.
And
so we'll
what we
be
plan on
setting a
doing
date
over
for
the next
that
fiscal
relatively
year.
soon and sending that out.
So those are the two big items. Per the usual reminder that you have any questions, Logan on our staff has put together a public survey on the draft STIP. I'm very well aware that we often speak in acronyms, as you try very hard not to. This is something that we found very helpful. Any questions on any items, please we try to keep it simple. Reach out, and we'll plan for that. Make it so that people can tell us if there's a project they really want and see as a big priority, or they really don't want, which we've kindly called not a priority. But that is information that in the past we've gotten several thousand responses and has helped inform the board for this board as they make decisions on the draft. That is something that is a federal requirement. We'll also be bringing forth the MPO's Unified Planning Work Program. That's essentially our budget and what we plan on doing over the next fiscal year. So those are the two big items. Also a reminder that Logan on our staff has put together a public survey on the draft STIP. So I don't think so. Please take it. Please distribute as you see fit. This is something that we've found very helpful in the past. We try to keep it simple.
I realized that I had
make it so that people can tell us if there's a project they really want and see as a big priority,
there is a total amount of just over $500,000 available.
Which we've kindly
Traditionally,
called not a priority.
the last handful of years,
But that is
10% of that
information
amount has
that
been set
in the
aside
past
as
we've gotten several
administrative
thousand responses and has helped inform the
administrative
board
costs
as
for
they've made
administrative
decisions on the
funds,
draft.
rather, for the city of Asheville, since it is the direct recipient and they administer the grants to subrecipients. So long story short, that first chart is incorrect. The second table shown under the 110.3 update are the correct numbers. Essentially what I was doing was just reporting out a 55-35 split out of the 90% available money when I should have been reporting
I don't think so, no.
55-35 out of the
With that, I'll say we are adjourned.
Thank you, everybody.
Thanks, everybody.
To have transparency